thing. By Chaim Brovender, and we're going to learn a little bit of the parsha. The parsha's Pekudei. The last psukim. I mean, if you look at it the way I look at it right now, the book of Shemot, of course, is the Ramban taught us that the book of Shemot is Geula. It's a kind of redemptive book. The whole story in the book. The first part of the book is Yetziat Mitzrayim. The second part of the book is Matan Torah and building the Mishkan. It's in some ways could also be called the book of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was leading Bnei Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu was leading Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim on the way to receiving the Torah. From there on the way to Eretz Canaan. This is the book of Moshe Rabbeinu, the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu. And, it didn't end as well as it might have. I mean, this story of leadership. The book of Vayikra, it's coming up, is a book that refers specifically to the Mishkan that was built. And later in later times, the Beit HaMikdash is the book of Vayikra. The book of Bamidbar is replete with attacks against the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu by the nations, the people. So that again, I think in some way, the book of Devarim is Moshe Rabbeinu's final, last will and testament, so to speak, to Bnei Yisrael, so that Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership, his ability to move the people in the right direction, that's all in the book of Shemot. So the book of Shemot could be called, I think, the book of Shemot could be called the book of Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership, or leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the book of Shemot ends with several psukim that are in themselves curious and problematic. So if you look at the bottom of the sheet, I have these psukim. Let's look at them. The psukim about the culmination of Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership, in effect. Lo yachol Moshe lavo el ohel moed. Moshe Rabbeinu was not given permission to come to Ohel Moed. He shachan alav ha'anan, because the cloud representing the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shachan alav, dwelled upon it, shachav alav ha'anan. This Moshe Rabbeinu could not come to the Ohel Moed because the anan, shachan alav anan, ukvod Hashem malei et hamishkan, and kavod, which is a synonym, really in this case, to the anan, right? The kavod, you knew that the cloud was not a regular rain cloud or a regular cloud of any kind, because it was in fact kavod Hashem. Malei et hamishkan, ki shachan alav ha'anan, kvod Hashem malei et hamishkan. So there's some place that Moshe Rabbeinu can't go to. The next pasuk is v'heyalot ha'anan me'al hamishkan. When the anan goes up from its position on the mishkan, al hamishkan, Yisu b'nei Yisrael b'kol maseihem, then the b'nei Yisrael know that they have to move on and they have to take a trip. They might not know where that trip is taking them to, but they know that they have to move on. Pasuk lamed zayin, v'im lo ye'aleh ha'anan, Lo yisu ad yom ha'alato. And if the Anan just remains in place on the Mishkan, Bnei Yisrael know that they are not supposed to move. They're not supposed to move on. Pasuk Lamed Chet. The Anan Hashem al Mishkan. The cloud is on the Mishkan Yomam. Ve'esh tiyeh laila bo. And at night there was a pillar of fire on the makom, the place of the Mishkan. Ki anan Hashem al Mishkan Yomam. Ve'esh tiyeh laila bo. Leinei kol Beit Yisrael b'kol maseihem. Kol maseihem. So these last psukim in the book of Shmot teach me that Moshe Rabbeinu was limited. Lo yachol Moshe labo el ol moed ki shechan alav ha'anan. In other words, the pasuk is telling me about a deficiency that Moshe Rabbeinu had. He could not do something. He lo yachol Moshe labo el ol moed ki shechan alav ha'anan. The anan prevents him from going closer. Now, this is not a small idea because, as you know, Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the cloud on Har Sinai to get the Torah. He was able to do that. He was able to do that. And the Mishkan is built along the lines of Matan Torah. I mean, as you get closer and closer, I mean, as far as the people are concerned, they have limits. There are places they can go to and there are places they can't go to. But Moshe Rabbeinu did have a connection to the Mishkan, as we will see in Rashi. Let's learn the Rashi first and continue our interpretation. Lo yechol Moshe lavo el ol moed, Rashi. Rashi's right there. Katuv acher omer. There's another pasuk, Rashi says, right, a pasuk in the book of Bamidbar, which says, Ubevo Moshe el Ohel Moed, and Moshe Rabbeinu came to the Ohel Moed. So here's a pasuk that said, Lo yachol Moshe lavo el Ohel Moed, and another pasuk that says, Bevo Moshe el Ohel Moed. Sounds like he could come anytime he wanted. Ba hakatuv hashlishi v'yichriya beinehem. Ba hakatuv hashlishi. There's a third pasuk that kind of delineates that the first two psukim mentioned are not really in contradiction. Shachan alav ha'anan, since the cloud dwelt upon it, amur me'ata, kol zman shaya alav ha'anan lo haya yachol lavo. Nistalek ha'anan, nichnasu medaber imo. So the Medrash, using one of the rules of interpretation, says that sometimes when there's a contradiction in the text, there's a third pasuk that resolves the contradiction, right? So that's called the Bakatuv Ashlishi V'Yichriya Beinehem. There's a third pasuk. He shachan alav ha'anan. That's the continuation of our pasuk. There's this kind of limpy kind of grammatical combination. Lo yachol Moshe lavo el ol moed. And then it says, Ki shachan alav ha'anan. And that means that when shachan alav ha'anan, he couldn't go in. כי שכן עליו הענן. אמור מעתה, כל זמן שהיה עליו הענן, לא היה יכול לבוא. As long as the anan was upon him, he couldn't go into the oil moed. נסתלק הענן, נכנס ומדבר עמו. נכנס משה רבינו מדבר עמו, spoke to הקדוש ברוך הוא. So when you look at this idea. So, okay, I'm happy. I thought that there was a contradiction, and now I see there's really no contradiction. That's terrific. Kisha Chana Lava Anan doesn't mean that it was always there. It means it was there sometimes, and sometimes it wasn't there. And when it wasn't there, when the cloud wasn't on the Mishkan, Kisha Chana Lava Anan, Kvod Hashem Alei et HaMishkan, then Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go in. But when the Anan lifted, moved away from the Ohel Moed, then Moshe Rabbeinu could go in. So all the psukim are fine. But to me, it leaves me to wonder, if the Torah wants to tell me something, shouldn't it opt to tell it to me in the simpler way? Why couldn't the Torah just say, ששוכן עליו הענן, לא יכול משה לבוא אל אוהל מועד. Just switch around the two stitches of the pasuk, and we have a new pasuk with the same information. What is the benefit that I get from this idea that you have two psukim that contradict each other, and there's a third pasuk that'll straighten it out? I mean, that seems to me to be a little odd and demanding some sort of a solution, some sort of a. If we look at the first text on the sheet on Shmot Perek Lamed Aleph, it starts by Daber Hashem al Moshe Lemor Re'eh Karati b'Shem B'Tzalel ben Uri ben Chula Matei Yehuda. You remember, these psukim appear in the parsha of Ki Tisa. You remember how it is. First there's Truma Tetzaveh. Truma and Tetzaveh, two parshiot about building the Mishkan. After Moshe Rabbeinu comes down from Har Sinai and Yom Kippurim, he tells the people that they have to build a Mishkan. And they have to bring a truma, they have to bring a contribution. Zahabu, kesef, unechoshet, gold and silver and copper. They have to bring that. And that story about building the Mishkan, first the kelim, the vessels of the Mishkan, then the walls of the Mishkan, right? Truma, Tetzaveh, the begadim of the Kohen, etc. all appear and finalized in the beginning of the parsha of Ki Tisa. Truma, Tetzaveh, Ki Tisa, all of the beginning of Ki Tisa includes a discussion about how to build it, how to build the Mishkan. And in Perek Lamed Aleph, that we're looking at, by Daber Hashem el Moshe Lemor Re'eh Karati b'Shem B'Tzalel ben Uri ben Chula Matei Yehuda. I'm designating B'Tzalel. V'amalei oto ruach Elokim b'chokhmah b'tvuna b'data b'kol melacha. He's a smart fellow, B'Tzalel. And I, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, am appointing him. L'chashov mashshavot, l'asot b'zahav v'kesef v'nechoshet. He's like a very, very highly accomplished artisan. He's able to do things that most people are not able to do. And then, Pasuk Vav. ואני נתתי איתו את עלייה בן אחיסמך למטה דן. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm going to employ somebody else, somebody new, l'matei dan. Ubelev kol chacham lev, natati chachma v'asu et kol asher tziviticha. And he'll have a group working with him, and they'll be able to do everything that has to be done. Et oel moed, vet haron, la'idut, vet ha'kaporet asher alav, et kol klei ha'oel, vet ha'shulchan, vet kelav, etc., etc. Now, what would you say? I mean, what is it exactly that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe Rabbeinu? Is he telling Moshe Rabbeinu that they're going to be subcontractors, people who know how to do things? I mean, after all, Moshe Rabbeinu led a very interesting life, but we have no indication that he knew how to build things, how to make kelim, vessels out of gold or silver or copper. So is that what's happening here? Is Moshe Rabbeinu being given the assistance that he needs to fulfill the directive given to him, which he passed on to Bnei Yisrael and told them that they have to build the Mishkan. And these are the kelim that go in the Mishkan. And here comes HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, Re'eh, Pasuk Bet, Re'eh. Yes, Re'eh means to understand something. There's some hidden understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants Moshe Rabbeinu to have. Karati b'shem B'tzalel. I'm called B'tzalel, who comes from Mata Yehuda. And you remember that well, it seems to me that if it's a question of spiritual achievement, we see Pasuk Gimel, Vamalei Oto, I will fill him. Ruach Elokim, with the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, b'chachma, b'tvuna, b'dat, b'kol melacha. So what, kol melacha, I understand, maybe that's not what Moshe Rabbeinu would be good at, the kol melacha. But all the rest of it, Amalei Oto Pasuk Gimel, Ruach Elokim, b'chachma, b'tvuna, uvedat. These are prophetic words. I will make him into a prophet, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, v'kol melacha. Not only that, he will become knowledgeable, v'kol melacha. So what exactly do we need? B'tzalel, I mean, we have Moshe Rabbeinu, don't we? Don't we have Moshe? Onto Bnei Yisrael. Re'u, he says. The same way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Re'eh, he says Re'u to the community of Yisrael, plural. Kara Hashem b'shem B'tzalel ben Uri ben Chule Matei Yehuda. He called him. Vayamalei Oto Ruach Elokim. Ruach Elokim is mentioned in the pasuk, right? B'chochma, b'tvuna, b'dat, b'kol melacha. It's like kind of pretty much the same. Lachashov mechshabot lasot zahab kesef nechoshet. So Moshe Rabbeinu is explaining to Bnei Yisrael that B'tzalel is good at this. He knows how to work with gold and silver and copper. V'charoshet aben, למלות ובחרושת עץ, לעשות בכל מלאכת מחשבה. He knows how to insert the jewels into holders. להורות נתן בליבו הוא בעלייה בן אחיסמך למטה דן. להורות. להורות means to instruct. Natan belibo, he became a real personality. And then he also mentions Moshe Rabbeinu to Bnei Yisrael again. Hu v'aliyah v'rachisamach l'matei dan. This is already too much for Rashi. And Rashi says Eliab. You see Eliab in the Rashi? Very little Rashi in our parsha, but here's a Rashi. Mishevet Dan. Eliab Mishevet Dan min hayerudim shebishvatim mibnei hashvachot. V'shva hamakom lebetzalel lemelechet hamishkan v'hu migdolei hashvatim. Yehuda. Migdolei. Gdolei means great or means large. It certainly was large. L'kayem ma shene'emar v'lo nekashua lifnei dal. You should not prefer the rich over the poor. So I don't understand. According to Rashi, it turns out that Betzalel and Eliab are chosen in order to make a point of social relevance. The rich and the poor, they shouldn't distinguish themselves, even though the rich were able to give larger donations and the poor probably not so well-heeled. It seems to me that there's a further message in this material that we've learned together about Moshe Rabbeinu after the Chet HaEgel. We know that after the Chet HaEgel, there are psukim that indicate clearly that it's just not going to be the same. Not going to be the same at the end of the parsha, even in the parsha of Mishpatim. So Bnei Yisrael already refused Moshe Rabbeinu's offer to go up on Har Sinai with him. Bnei Yisrael said, no, you go, Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not for us. Too difficult. Too difficult for us. And as an introduction to the Chet HaEgel, it's a perfect introduction that there was something awry with Bnei Yisrael. It was somehow they accepted the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu and they followed him and then they accepted the Torah, but there was something missing. And then the Chet HaEgel, of course. The Chet HaEgel, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, as Rashi quotes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, it's never going to be the same. It's never going to be what it might have been. It'll be good, but it won't be what it might have been. And because it won't be what it might have been, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to lead you to Eretz Canaan. But an angel will lead you to Eretz Canaan. I mean, we're different. The experiential aspect will be different, will not be the same. You're not going to be able to go with under Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership in the same way, but there'll be a dual leadership. Moshe Rabbeinu and an angel will take you to Eretz Canaan. So if you would ask the question, what is the difference between Truma and Tetzaveh, on the one hand, which teaches that Moshe Rabbeinu told Bnei Yisrael that they should build the Mishkan. The first thing he told them when he came down from Har Sinai the second time on Yom Kippurim, Moshe Rabbeinu said, build the Mishkan. Build the Mishkan. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Re'ei, which I think means understand, to Moshe Rabbeinu. Karati b'shem B'Tzalel and Aliyah, which means it's not going to be the same as it might have been. It's not going to be the same because somehow Bnei Yisrael have indicated a flaw in the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu, it's true, he could have built the Mishkan on his own. He could have done what B'Tzalel and Aliyah were there to help him do. But that was only before the Chet HaEgel. After the Chet HaEgel, the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu changed. He needed support. He needed people to help him. And the people had to understand that while HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with them and would help them to build the Mishkan, it would not be exactly the same. And if we go back to the Rashi that we learned at the beginning of this discussion, Lo yachol Moshe lavo el ol moed, v'shachan alav ha'anan. And I asked, why couldn't the Torah just tell us that when the Anan dwells upon the oil moed, Moshe Rabbeinu can't go in, and when it moves away, he can't go in. Why do we have this business about Ba Katuv Shlishi v'Ichriya B'neihem? The other pasuk quoted in the Rashi, B'vo Moshe el ol moed. There's a pasuk that seems to teach us that Moshe Rabbeinu could go to the Ol Moed whenever he wished. So we need another pasuk to tell us that it's not, because if the Torah would have written Lo Yachol Moshe Lavo El Ol Moed Ki or Ki Shachan Alav Ha'anan Lo Yachol Moshe Lavo El Ol Moed, you would have thought that that was always the situation. But with this kind of limud, Katuv Acher Omer, Rashi, Katuv Acher Omer, there's another pasuk that says, Bevo Moshe El Ol Moed, indicating that Moshe could come anytime he wanted. But Katuv Ashlishi V'Chriya B'neihem, so you need another statement someplace to determine that the two psukim do not contradict each other, but they are really talking about two particular situations. But if you do that, if the Torah wrote that, right, then we understand that Moshe Rabbeinu himself, his own relationship to the Mishkan, to the Aron, to the Anan, changed with the Chet HaEgel. Originally, the pasuk in Bamidbar was the correct one. Bevo Moshe El Ol Moed, any time. But that changed. And it changed into Lo Yachol Moshe Lavo El Ol Moed, any time. Only some of the time. And because the Torah wanted to emphasize it, the Torah wrote what it wrote in the different places in Shemot and in Bamidbar, in order to teach us once again that the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu somehow became problematic, And what was originally planned in the Mishkan that was built in Truma and Tetzaveh, and the beginning of Kitisa, that Mishkan, Rosh Rabbeinu would have been able to go into any time. But the Mishkan that was actually built by Bitzalel and Aliyah, indicating that somehow Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't do it. There was like a lack of connectivity between Moshe Rabbeinu and the Mishkan at the end, so that when the cloud went away from the Mishkan, Moshe Rabbeinu could enter. But as long as the cloud was on the Mishkan, Moshe Rabbeinu was not able to enter. This in spite of the fact that the Mishkan somehow reflects Matan Torah, and in Matan Torah it says clearly in the Pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu entered into the cloud on the Matan Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu entered into the cloud. That was what happened in Matan Torah, but that's not what could happen with the Mishkan, because the Mishkan was built after the Chet of the Egel HaZahav. Tov, all the best. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Chodesh Tov.